Good morning, everyone. I thought I'd record a podcast today about my fantasy hockey league that has a salary cap in it. We've kind of gone nuts in that league in the last week and a half in terms of trades. Um, Everyone decided that they all wanted to trade all at once with everyone. So we just had, I believe, 7 trades that just finished, like processing. It's rather insane. There's 6 that processed this morning, 2 more that processed yesterday, 1 on Thursday, 2 on Wednesday last week. Like, pretty much since 4 days ago, we've had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, like 10 trades processed. We've got 2 more, like, still going right now. That'll be ready tomorrow morning at 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. As for my trades, I have done not a fantastic job of reworking my team, but a significant job of reworking my team. I believe the numbers I came up with the other day when I was looking at it was that out of the 44 draft picks, I was only going to have 22 players left on my team from the original. Excuse me, out of the 45 draft picks, I was only going to have 25 of them once everything processed this morning. Of those 45, 3 were going to go out the door right away for various, like, roster-related reasons. I know we drafted 25 in the regular round. 3 were going to get dropped regardless for me because I don't want to play with 0 rookies on my major league roster. I've got to go back and look at the reasoning behind that. I know there was a reason why it was specifically 3 and not 4 or 0 or whatever. There was probably... cap. Salary cap was the reason why. Because I wanted to fit everything in under the salary cap, so I wanted a little extra roster space and a little bit of extra salary cap. So when the season started, I had the ability to maneuver and I wouldn't need to cut people with a penalty. There was approximately a 4-week period, I believe, between the end of the draft and the start of the regular season that we were able to drop people without penalty. So if somebody at 2 years for $6 million sounded really good when we drafted them, doesn't sound very good anymore, and there were no takers on the trade market, then we could cut them and we wouldn't have to worry about taking a penalty to our salary cap budget. My team did not start well out of the gate. It's been very unlucky. I've been in the top 2 or 3 points against the entire year, so I have not been able to make up much ground. I mean, my offense has been poorer than I thought, but I thought I'd at least have league average. I have been about 6th from the bottom right now, which is about where I am. Essentially, you have your top 12 teams that are all, like, feeling like they can compete for the top 8 playoff spots, which is cool. So you have 8 people in, 4 people competing for it, and then you have the rest of us. One guy started selling right away because that's all he's going to do. He's just going to build for 3 years from now, 2 to 3 years from now, and he's not going to worry about it. So he's going to compete in the 2026-2027 season or beyond. That's fine. That's up to him. I tried to take players that actually had some sort of now value. That way, if it broke right, awesome. If it didn't break right, no harm, no foul. I can flip them for more. Then you'll also have those early season trades where it sounds really good, where I took the Bruins' top prospect, Fabian Lysell, and moved him with a 3rd round pick. And this is in a 4-round draft, a 3rd round rookie pick for Jordan Bennington, who's starting for the St. Louis Blues. I thought Bennington would come back and actually hold himself together. He's been halfway. Not as bad as last year, but not as good as I had hoped he would. So that kind of blows some stuff up. I probably could have gotten him for a smaller pick, I essentially sent out an offer and it got accepted right away, which means I probably should have started with something a little lower, a lower draft pick, or even possibly not moving a draft pick. But that was like the second trade into the year, and I know I made a comment about it on a previous podcast. You're sorting out the league. You're trying to figure out what the value here and there is, who's willing to trade, who values picks, who values players, who values prospects. Do I want a long contract with a lot of money because I plan on being really cheap for a long time, so I need to fill up the salary cap so I stay above the floor? All kinds of things are going on. So I know I got roasted. There's a little podcast that goes on with this league. They've released 3 episodes, and I think in theory they're supposed to drop a 4th one, which is fine. Once a month, once every other month. I don't really care. It's really fun to listen to them talk about a league I'm specifically involved in instead of just hockey in general or fantasy hockey in general or something. It's nice to say, man, what were they thinking? Blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. Well, you know what? I'm coming back, and I said, you know what? Hold my trade. I got this. So I have I have been involved this year in remaking my team. Oh, I thought I had that already set up on the screen. Let's see. I have been involved, other than that one trade, since the start of December now, I've been involved in 4 trades at the start of December to rework my team, pick up a handful of draft picks, which is cool. That's 4 draft picks, all second rounders that I've picked up. I've only sent out 1/3 and 1/4. I picked up 5 second round picks. And then I had 2 right at Christmas. One to free up space, because with the way that the roster works, if the skater has 100 or less games played in the NHL, they are considered minors eligible for roster purposes, and you have a subsection on your screen that shows all your minors eligible players. The Yahoo has the NA slot. I don't think ESPN has an equivalent unless you super customize a league where you have not active slots. But that I think that's just differing platforms here on Fantrax. There's a minors eligible one, so you're like, okay, I'm going to hold on to them down here. If they play, they're not going to accumulate, but I don't have to put them on the waiver wire. They're my little taxi squad of sorts. And I like I said, I made a trade to free up a roster spot here. I made a trade to free up a roster spot there. I picked a player. I cleared out a bunch of NHL level players that have played more than 101 games for some guys that are still on the cusp. I did that. I cleared out some salary. That way, in case people wanted to move those players, I could further that trade tree. Okay, they don't want a $5 million guy. Maybe I can take a slightly weaker but $2.5 million guy. I can move him. Here's $2.5 million. Cheap guy. If you don't like him, you can cut him. You can take the 35% cap hit. You're only paying $700,000, $820,000 to your salary. So, your net gain is still $1.5 million on the lower player. If you do that on the bigger player, you're going to take a hit. You're going to get a bigger savings, but you're going to take a big hit, and that kind of constrains you in a different way. I sold off an injured player for a draft pick that I don't really care about. He might be out all year. He may not. Who knows? Not going to worry about it. At this point, I am looking forward to not just next year, but I'm also looking forward to the 2020... What is this? It would be the 2025-2026 hockey season. I'm looking at loading up on young players, cheap contracts, and keeping just a few guys in place so I don't fall under the salary cap floor. So I've moved players to gain draft picks again. Good young not young players, but cheap players like Sam Lafferty, who plays fourth line role for Vancouver, but he's only at 1.1 million, and for the points that he's putting up, not good, but still better than the players on the team I was trading him to. So essentially, he can take those more expensive, well-known players and flip them. I took Sean Monahan, who's running second line up in Montreal. That's cool that he's running second line today. He's probably going to run third line there or elsewhere because Colton Dock is supposed to run second line and Nick Suzuki is supposed to run first line up there. I can move him. In return, I am getting the captain for the New York Islanders, Anders Lee. Hey, $7 million. That helps me out. I also got a draft pick because I took a contract off the dude's hand. I now have more salary to reach the floor because my team is cheap and full of young contracts outside of my goalies, which are a shit show, but that's everybody's goalies this year. I made a fantastically huge trade. This is probably going to define my team for quite some time. I took Matthew Boldy, the quintessential player that should be on my team. Shouldn't be anywhere else. Should only be on my team. And this is one of the ones that really spurred a bunch of trades because we agreed to it on Thursday. He is 22 years old. He signed at only $7 million, which sounds like a lot, especially for a 22-year-old. But his entire contract is $7 million a year every year. This is not the NFL where your cap hit changes every year. This is also not the NBA where your cap hit changes every year. This is not Major League Baseball where your raise goes up. You have, for the purposes of contracts, an average annual value, an AAV. So your salary may be $1 million this year versus $3 million next year, and your bonus may be $2 million this year versus, $0 next year. However they want to cut it, as long as it all equals out to the same $3 million or $4 million, whatever $1 million each and every year. That's fine. So they can get paid different, but like I said, for contract purposes, for salary cap, it's got to be the same each and every year. Until you sign an extension, in which case you can either get more or less money. Then you have to worry about it. But it's not an every year deal. So $7 million, he signed a 7x7, I believe. So he's going to get paid $7 million at 29 years old. He's a top 50 talent. He's a top 100 guaranteed talent. He's like potentially a top 50 talent in the NHL at 22 years old. I moved him in order to A, clear up a roster spot, which is terrible. This is kind of funny. To clear up a roster spot, to pick up prospects, and to pick up draft picks. This guy was not on my trade block. I had a guy offer 2 first-round picks and a prospect. And I'm like, I can't do that. I said, I'm not really a fan of that prospect. The guys I'm really interested on your team would be here, here, and here. So I wanted Akira Schmid, the goalie out of New Jersey, although he's probably going to fight with Nico Daws next year, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting Nico Daws in another 2 or 3 years, but whatever. There's Dragicevic from Seattle. He's like the second or third D prospect up there, but he is supposed to be really, really good. Riker Evans already came up, and I whiffed on a trade for him. Probably should have traded for him. I screwed that up 2 months ago. A month and a half ago. But there's Riker Evans, there's Ty Nelson, who's highly thought after, and there's Lucas Dragicevic. Either he's going to be a very nice second pairing D for Seattle here in like 2 years, or he's going to get flipped to another team who could actually use him. Which means, maybe Calgary falls out of love with one of their D players. Maybe San Jose decides that they need someone other than Kalen Addison, Mario Ferraro, and a whole bunch of no-names. But, whatever. Dragicevic has good value 2 to 3 years from now, which is what I want. I'm not playing for now because I don't want the now. I'm going to play as hard as I can. I'm going to set my roster, but I'm not going to set up these players because I don't want these contracts lined up right now. Essentially, I'm going to take players, cut contracts, so I can. I don't know. There's a lot of salary cap shenanigans I want to get into, but like I can take him in the future, and then Simone Holmstrom, who's fairly close to losing his minors eligibility. He's at 91 games right now, which means I can hold him for another 9 games, and then figure out if I want to keep him, drop him, which would be dumb, or I can flip him for more draft picks or prospects. But Holmstrom's 22 years old. He's not an overager. He's not like Marcus Bjork, who's, come up to the NHL, was given minutes, did all right, but he's so far down that list of potential players that he's like stuck in the depth chart of the AHL right now. I mean, that's how far down he was last year when Columbus could not figure out how to keep their D-core healthy. Like, everybody was injured the entire year. This year, they're doing a little bit better. They're a little more healthy, and they also have Damian Saverson, who they got from New Jersey, and Ivan Provorov. I'm trying to think of how to pronounce his last name. He used to play for Philly last year. So they picked up those 2 guys. So more health and 2 new defensive players have really bumped people down the list in Columbus again. Point is, ADHD moment there. Got to reset. The point is, Holmstrom is right on the edge and someone I want to keep. Unlike other players that are older, like Bjork, who is 26. I don't need a 26-year-old minor eligible player right now because I don't need to roster somebody that's in the minors. I can take someone else that's been called up fresh to the majors, who could be 28, 29, even 30. I mean, Justin Danforth, a winger for the Blue Jackets right now, is 30 years old. He's at like 93, 94 games, so I can move him between my minor squad and then move him up to the major league roster and pick up games as needed. So I went through Schmid, Dragicevic, and Holmstrom for Boldy. But the draft picks, he kept adding draft picks. He went from 2 firsts to 2 firsts and 2 seconds. And then he was going to offer 3 firsts, but it was only going to be 3 total picks. He was going to offer... The offer right now was the middle offer. He gives me this year's 2nd round pick, next year's first, the 2026 first, and the 2027 second. This is a guy who's going to be top 3 in the league for a little while. I mean, probably more times than not, especially since I gave him Boldy. Now all I have to hope for is like really bad luck. But I want the draft picks more than the player right now. This was extremely difficult to do. I would not have gotten the equivalent if I had moved another package of prospects, even if I had tried. This guy was not going to do it. But I kept telling him no, and he kept upping the ante. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to negotiate with him. And essentially this was his last best offer, except. So, like I said before, I make a lot of trades. I clear up roster spots. I pick up draft picks. I make way for prospects. I do a whole host of things. I took Dante Fabro, who I had gotten in that earlier trade with a different person when I was clearing off major league roster players. This is one of the young players I took back. I believe he's 2 years, $2.5 million. And you know what? That's cool. I'm already running my 6 rostered D, my 6 slotted D, and then I've got like 3 guys on my bench. So I need to clear out some defensive players that are actively playing in the NHL that I can't send down to the minors. So, fine. Moved him out. That's $2 million off my cap, and I don't have to worry about the roster spot. I also sent an injured young player, Noah Cates, who's been with Philly right now. He started out minors eligible at the start of the year, and then he just kind of fell apart. He's not favored by Tortorella anymore. He's down 3 minutes a game because everyone's actually back and healthy this year. Like, this is a guy that was running second line minutes plus because there was literally nobody else there. But, and he was averaging almost half a point a game last year on decent shooting percentage. This year, his shooting percentage is down. His time on ice has been cut. His power play time has been cut. His shorthanded time has increased, which means he's not going to get the high-end peripherals this year. So, I took him. I said he's 24 years old. He's been on the roster, or he's been injured. Take him off my hands. I don't have to worry about his $2.6 million contract this year, and I believe next year, and possibly the year after. He's a guy that's a third liner at best right now. So once people get injured and move on, maybe he'll be more worth it later. And then at that point, I can figure out whether he'd be worth trying to pick back up again. So I made a huge, I submitted that offer, or accepted it at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I was screwing around on the Discord, and I'm like, I have got something. Something is brewing, and I'm like, do you feel that? Do you feel that in the breeze? Something's coming up. And everyone's like, what? And they're like, oh, right. We got the weekly report that's running behind. So he submitted and he's like, hi, is that the thing that you were thinking about? I'm like, oh, hell no, watch this. And I'm like, mic drop. So I dropped them on... I dropped that trade first thing in the morning, and everybody lost their mind. Oh my god, what is this? What's going on? Holy moly. It was just it was insane. The crap that was going on. It was hilarious. So, Boldy's not someone you move. And if I didn't need the roster spots, I would have been fine. I would have been able to take on the 3 prospects and the 4 draft picks for the 1 player. I threw in, as a favor, 2 young players because I want to be able to clear up roster spots, like I said. So it helps me out a little bit. I probably could have gotten another draft pick for it. I probably could have said, hey, turn that 2027 into a first, or throw me a background, or, a couple random third-round picks. I am giving you young players in addition to him, and it probably would have been fine. But I took what I wanted. I got the prospects I wanted, because Holmstrom is supposed to be one of their best young players out there, and that's an old team on the Islanders. I will take Holmstrom in a potentially second to first line role in the next 2 years. That's okay. I cleared out an extra D that I didn't need that was clogging up my roster. I'd rather have a winger. I'd rather have a player with right wing eligibility over a player that has defensive eligibility. I don't need a defensive player right now. I got plenty of those. So I cleared out contracts. I cleared out money. I cleared out roster spots. And I got draft picks. I got exactly what I needed. Now the question is, what is left? And that I took Philip Broberg, who was a high-end draft pick for Edmonton in 2019. He was 8th overall. They just can't figure out how to use him in Edmonton. I flipped him for Victor Soderstrom. Before Sean Dursey came through, Soderstrom was supposed to be one of those guys that was going to pick up the game this year. And he was going to have, like, second pairing minutes. Like, him and JJ Moser were supposed to be, like, second pairing D-men. It hasn't happened. He's been in the minors because Moser has continued. Kesselring got called up instead, who I also have on my roster. And Sean Dursey got traded from the Kings. And Dursey's now the top guy out there, which is fine. I'm okay with this. I will take Soderstrom because I can sit here and cheer for him versus Broberg, who a lot of people are saying everyone's giving up on him in the NHL right now. Like, I could not sell Broberg as an addition to my team, or to anybody's team. They would not take him as a prospect. So, you know what? Fine. I will find a guy that I want at the same, more or less same point in their career and pick him up and hold on to him. Soderstrom potentially could get moved too. There was talk that Soderstrom gets moved in a trade for some, offensive help because they've actually been pretty solid defensively without him. They've also gotten really good goalie help this year. So, I have one more trade up my sleeve. I'm trying to see if I can flip Anders Lee from that trade that I was talking about earlier, where I acquired him for the Sam Lafferty and Sean Monahan for Lee in the draft pick. I'm going to see if I can move. Lee is going to get moved today. What he gets moved for, I don't know. I was talking turkey with the owner, with his owner, and he was going to flip him for Andre Athanasiou. I don't really want Chicago Blackhawks, but Anders Lee is signed for like 4 years at $7 million, and he's 33 years old. I don't want that on my team. That's a terrible contract, and if I can get out of it now and not later, without sending draft picks, I will do it. I also, Athanasiou is only supposed to be 2 years at like $4.2 million. Fine. If there's nobody else, I will take him. I would rather have Anthony Beauvillier out there in Chicago because I think Beauvillier is going to get top-line role. I mean, he has had top-line role. I think he's going to keep it because he was, like, a good young player for the Islanders a couple years back who was supposed to, like, really break out, and then they moved him to Vancouver when that breakout wasn't big enough, and then Vancouver is like, okay, well, we've got our guys, we don't need you as much anymore, and then Vancouver shipped him out to Chicago. All within a span of, like, a year. So, I would rather have Anthony Beauvillier. I'm also trying to pick up a prospect from that team, Connor Geekie, but he says he doesn't want to give him up unless it's a I can't possibly refuse kind of deal. Well, I have extra draft picks. After everything got processed, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 second round picks this year. I've got a first, 6 seconds, and 2 thirds. I mean, I've got 9 draft picks this year. Hell, I've got 2, 4, 6. I've got 6 draft picks next year. 2 firsts, 3 seconds, and a fourth. And then I've got 2 firsts in 2026 for a total of 5. I've got 2 seconds in 2027 also for a total of 5. I'm picking up draft picks so I can go and just build this team. Hey, I screwed up with this contract. Thank God it's over. I'm going to pick up another small contract and take dart throws or, scratch off tickets here. That will be fine. I'm also listening to draft pick trades more now than at the start of the year. I missed out on David Perron in Detroit. I was offered a 3rd round pick for him. I ended up cutting Perron. Yes, it helps me with $1.6 million on my salary, but that's a buyout I wish I had back. Buyouts I'd rather use on other players like Pat Maroon, who I picked up when literally my entire team was injured and nobody in my minors could come up. Then I made some trades and all of a sudden he wasn't necessary anymore. Same thing with Jamie Vesey. I picked him up in a trade because I needed him to grease the wheels. It was an extra $1 million off the other team's roles that I went and took on, or $1.5 million off his roles that it's like, yeah, whatever, screw it. I'll take him because he will balance this trade in your favor. Instead of being 500,000 in my favor, it'll be 500,000 in his favor, or a million in his favor. But right now, it sounds like the dogs need to go out, so I'm going to leave it at that, and hopefully I'll come back with another trade soon for my fantasy hockey salary cap league. Thank you very much, and have a good day.